An extraterrestrial matriarch's world shattered when her previously immobile daughter took her first steps, a miracle attributed to Jacob Matthews. He stood before the imposing gates of the Thalia estate, clutching his employment contract and grappling with the bewildering reality he'd stepped into. The mansion, a colossal structure perched atop the hill, resembled a slumbering titan, its gleaming spires and expansive terraces seemingly unbound by terrestrial architectural conventions. However, this was no ordinary human family. "You must be the new domestic assistant," a voice emanated from the intercom. The gates parted with a nearly silent hum. "Lady Asara awaits your arrival." Jacob squared his shoulders and proceeded up the winding driveway. At 32 years of age, his career had been a nomadic journey through biotechnology research and physical therapy, abruptly halted by funding cuts. When the employment agency presented this opportunity, a live-in assistant for a prosperous alien widow, he'd almost dismissed it with a laugh. Yet, the offered remuneration quickly silenced his amusement. The colossal front door swung open before he could even consider knocking. A humanoid butler with 4 arms and skin the hue of polished copper inclined his head. "Mr. Matthews, I am Pax, head of household staff. Lady Asara is presently engaged in a business discussion. I shall escort you to your quarters and provide a briefing on your responsibilities." Jacob followed Pax through corridors adorned with artwork that appeared to subtly shift and animate from varying perspectives. The estate was a harmonious fusion of alien opulence and earthly comforts, meticulously designed for a family that cherished both worlds. "Lady Asara originates from the Seruan system near Proxima," Pax elaborated as they walked. "Her late spouse served as a trade ambassador, bringing her to Earth 15 years prior. Following his untimely demise last year, she elected to remain here with their daughter." Jacob inquired cautiously. "The daughter. I was informed she requires specialized care." Pax's demeanor softened. "Miss Liam is a child of 12 Earth years, a truly remarkable young girl. She sustained severe spinal trauma during a shuttle malfunction 3 years ago. Her father perished instantly. Lady Asara has sought counsel from every available specialist, both on this planet and beyond." They halted before a door at the end of a long hallway. "These are your accommodations. Your principal duties will encompass assisting Miss Liana with her daily routines, coordinating her therapeutic regimen, and undertaking occasional domestic tasks as required. Lady Asara manages several interplanetary enterprises and is frequently occupied." Jacob's chambers were both spacious and comfortable, featuring a separate workspace outfitted with advanced technological amenities. After he had settled in, Pax led him to meet Liana. The young girl's room was bathed in light and exuded cheerfulness, filled with an array of books, holographic displays, and what appeared to be partially completed scientific experiments. Liana herself occupied a levitating wheelchair beside the window, her skin a delicate shade of periwinkle, a lighter hue than her mother's, and her silver hair seemed to encircle her head like a luminous halo. Her large, inquisitive eyes turned towards him as he entered. "You are the new assistant?" she inquired, her voice possessing a melodious quality. "The previous one resigned after I corrected his grasp of quantum physics." Jacob couldn't suppress a smile. "I am Jacob Matthews, and I suspect my understanding of quantum physics is in dire need of refinement." Liana's serious expression dissolved into a radiant grin. "I believe I shall like you. Might you assist me with my exoskeleton fitting? The medical technicians adjusted it yesterday, but it still isn't calibrated correctly." Jacob crossed the room and carefully examined the lightweight framework adjacent to her wheelchair. It was indeed cutting-edge technology, yet something about the neural interface appeared incongruous. "Who was responsible for its design?" he inquired, a frown creasing his brow. "The preeminent physicians across 3 star systems," a lyrical voice responded from the doorway. Jacob turned to find Lady Asara standing there, and his breath caught in his throat. She was tall and possessed an effortless grace, her cerulean skin a deeper, more vibrant shade than her daughter's, reminiscent of the unfathomable depths of the ocean. Her silken white hair was elegantly swept back in a sophisticated twist, and she wore a simple, unadorned brown gown that somehow conveyed an aura of regal bearing. "Lady Asara," Jacob acknowledged, straightening his posture. "Jacob Matthews. I appreciate this opportunity." Her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and a striking violet, appraised him with a cool, measured gaze. "Mr. Matthews, your qualifications are commendable. I trust you will exhibit greater tenacity than those who preceded you. Mother, Lyanna interjected with a sigh, you have a tendency to intimidate them. A fleeting smile touched Lady Asara's lips. Nonsense. They simply lack the requisite aptitude. She then turned her attention back to Jacob. Dinner is at 7. Lyanna will acquaint you with her daily regimen. After she departed, Lyanna rolled her eyes. She's not always so formal. She's simply protective. Jacob nodded, refocusing his attention on the exoskeleton. May I? He asked, gesturing towards the device. Please. It's intended to facilitate my standing, but the neural interface malfunctions intermittently. As Jacob meticulously examined the apparatus, his mind was already formulating potential modifications. His background in neurobiology, though not explicitly stated on his resume, was an integral part of his incomplete doctoral studies. He perceived the design flaw instantly. The internal interface is treating your nervous system as if it were human, he murmured. The calibration is entirely inappropriate for Seruan physiology. Lyanna's eyes widened perceptibly. That is precisely what I have been attempting to convey to them. Our neural pathways share similarities, but they are not identical. Jacob spent the remainder of the afternoon becoming intimately familiar with Lyanna's daily routines. The young girl possessed a brilliant intellect, an insatiable curiosity, and remarkable resilience in spite of her physical challenges. By the time dinner commenced, he had already begun mentally sketching modifications for her exoskeleton. During the meal, Lady Asara posed incisive questions regarding his experience and qualifications. Jacob responded with candor, though he deliberately understated his keen interest in the exoskeleton. He sensed, with a profound certainty, that Lady Asara had relinquished all hope in technological remedies. Later that evening, as Jacob settled into his new living quarters, he retrieved his tablet and commenced an in-depth investigation into Seruan physiology. If the foremost medical experts across 3 distinct planetary systems had been unable to restore Lyanna's ability to walk, perhaps they had approached the problem with an overly complex perspective. He had nothing to lose by endeavoring, and judging by the determined spark in Lyanna's eyes, he knew she, too, had not surrendered her aspirations. Over the ensuing weeks, Jacob seamlessly integrated into the rhythm of life at the Thalia estate. By day, he diligently fulfilled his duties as Lyanna's assistant, providing support with her exercises and academic pursuits. By night, he underwent a transformation, becoming a clandestine biomedical engineer. His quarters had evolved into an impromptu laboratory. Components pilfered from the mansion's extensive technological repository were meticulously arranged across his desk, interspersed with detailed schematics of Seruan physiology procured from medical databases. Jacob dedicated late hours to his clandestine work each night, diligently ensuring that his search history was purged and his clandestine endeavors were concealed before the dawn. What occupies your time so consistently in here? Lyanna inquired one afternoon, her hovering wheelchair emitting a soft hum as she unexpectedly appeared in his doorway. Jacob swiftly cleared the display on his tablet. Just some personal research. Should you not be attending your music lesson? Cancelled. The instructor has contracted a peculiar alien influenza. Lyanna maneuvered her wheelchair closer, her curious gaze sweeping across his desk. That appears to be neural interface wiring. Are you constructing something? Jacob hesitated. He had not intended to involve Lyanna at this juncture, but her prodigious intellect could prove invaluable. Furthermore, he required insights into Seruan physiology that were not accessible through public archives. Can you maintain a secret? He finally asked, her face illuminated with excitement. From Mother? Absolutely. He revealed the preliminary designs for the exoskeleton, articulating his hypothesis regarding the shortcomings of previous iterations. They are treating your nervous system as if it were human, but Seruan neural pathways transmit signals in a fundamentally different manner. I believe I can adapt this interface to communicate in your native biological language, so to speak. Lyanna's eyes widened. You are attempting to enable me to walk again. I am trying, Jacob emphasized. No guarantees, but yes, that is the objective. The young girl fell silent for a prolonged moment, then whispered, Mother has given up, you know. She doesn't believe anything will ever work anymore. That is precisely why this must remain between us, Jacob stated gently. There's no point in raising her hopes until we have concrete results. Lena nodded solemnly. Then, a mischievous grin spread across her face. I have something that might help you understand Mother better." That evening, while Jacob was assisting Leanna with organizing her books, she inadvertently toppled a decorative box in her room, spilling several leather-bound journals onto the floor. "Oops," she remarked, her tone suggesting a distinct lack of remorse. Jacob stooped to help gather them. "What are these?" "Mother's journals," Leanna replied softly. "She does not know that I have them. After Father passed and I was injured, she began to record everything, stating that her heart was too burdened to contain it all." Jacob immediately attempted to return them. "Lena, these are personal documents. We should not—" "I am not suggesting you read all of them," she interrupted, her large eyes pleading. "Perhaps just the one from last month. She seems perpetually melancholic, and I thought if you understood her more thoroughly, perhaps you could help restore her happiness." Jacob hesitated, his conscience warring with his burgeoning curiosity. Lady Asara maintained a cordial yet somewhat distant demeanor towards him, though he occasionally detected her observing him when she believed she was unobserved. "Please," Leanna added, "I simply wish to see her happy again." With a sigh, Jacob accepted the most recent journal. "I shall only glance at the final entry. That is all I ask." Later that night, alone in his quarters, Jacob gazed at the journal on his desk. This constituted a significant violation of privacy. He ought to return it immediately. Instead, he opened it to the final entry. "The human assistant is unlike the others. He regards Leanna as an individual, not merely a problem to be resolved. Today, I observed him elucidating orbital mechanics using fruit from the kitchen, and she was laughing, genuinely laughing. I have not heard that sound in such a long time. When he addresses me, he meets my gaze without the characteristic human awkwardness when interacting with non-extraterrestrials. There is an intrinsic quality about him that evokes a sense of Kalen, not in physical appearance, but in spirit. That quiet, unyielding determination. It is unsettling. I find myself noticing observations that are improper and unprofessional. I am his employer, and Leanna requires stability, not complications." Jacob closed the journal, his heart pounding. He too had noticed Lady Asara. How could he not? Her innate grace, her fierce devotion to her daughter, even her formal reserve had begun to captivate him. Yet he had never conceived that she might harbor similar inclinations. He set the journal aside and returned to his clandestine project with renewed resolve. The standard models approached the nervous system as a rudimentary electrical circuit, but Saruan physiology integrated elements closer to bioluminescent pathways. His modifications showed considerable promise, but he required more specialized components. The following morning at breakfast, Lady Asara reviewed her itinerary with Pax, while Jacob assisted Leanna with her meal. "I will be engaged in off-world meetings until late this evening," Asara announced. "The Proxima trade negotiations have reached a critical juncture." "We shall manage admirably, Mother," Lena assured her. "Jacob is going to assist me with my science project today." Asara's violet eyes briefly met Jacob's. "Thank you for your dedication, Mr. Matthews. Leanna appears considerably happier since your arrival. She is an extraordinary child." "It is my pleasure," Jacob replied truthfully. Something flickered in Asara's expression, perhaps warmth or gratitude, before her professional demeanor reasserted itself. "Pax will attend to any household matters in my absence." After she departed in her private shuttle, Lena turned to Jacob with palpable excitement. "This is perfect. We have the entire day to work on the project." Jacob smiled at her enthusiasm. "First, your actual studies. Then, if time permits, we shall conduct some tests." As they progressed through Leanna's lessons, Jacob found himself contemplating Asara's journal entry. The attraction he felt was evidently not unilateral. However, pursuing any romantic entanglement would be fraught with complications, not solely because she was his employer, but also because his clandestine project could be construed as a breach of her trust. Nevertheless, when he observed Leanna's hopeful expression as they commenced testing neural response patterns that afternoon, he knew he could not falter. If there existed even a remote possibility of enabling her to walk again, he was compelled to persevere for Leanna's sake. And perhaps, just perhaps, to witness Asara's genuine smile for the first time since his arrival. Jacob was in the process of applying the finishing touches to his latest exoskeleton modifications when a message from Pax appeared on his tablet. Lady Asara requests your presence for dinner in the private dining room at 8 p.m. Formal attire is required. He stared at the screen, his pulse quickening. The private dining room was reserved exclusively for Asara's most esteemed business associates or distinguished personal guests. In the 2 months he had been employed at the estate, he had never received an invitation to dine there. She's discovered our secret, Leanna declared dramatically, displaying the message to him. They had narrowly averted exposure earlier that day when Asara had unexpectedly returned from her business trip, necessitating the hurried concealment of their prototype beneath a draped cloth. Perhaps she simply wishes to discuss your progress, Jacob suggested, though a part of him doubted its veracity. Leanna rolled her eyes. Mother does not require the private dining room for such discussions. She is either going to dismiss you, or... The young girl's expression turned decidedly mischievous. Or she harbors alternative intentions. Leanna, Jacob exclaimed, feeling a flush creep up his neck. What? I'm 12. Not obtuse. She gazes at you in the manner depicted in romance hollows between characters. Leanna spun her wheelchair in a small circle. Besides, Saruans are considerably more pragmatic regarding attraction than humans. We do not squander time on your convoluted courtship rituals. Jacob raised an eyebrow. And what insights do you possess regarding courtship rituals? I read, she stated primly, and Mother's journals are quite informative. Precisely at 8 o'clock that evening, Jacob presented himself at the private dining room, attired in the formal wear that Pax had delivered to his quarters, a meticulously tailored suit that fit him flawlessly, though he couldn't recall ever being measured for it. The room exuded intimacy, illuminated by floating orbs that cast a warm glow upon the small table set for two. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking panorama of the valley below, dotted with the distant lights of the city. As Asara stood by the windows, her back turned to him, clad in a flowing gown the color of Earth's oceans at twilight. Her silken white hair cascaded freely down her back, eschewing its usual elegant coiffure. You requested my presence, Lady Asara, Jacob stated formally. She turned, and the sight of her quite literally stole his breath. The dress shimmered with her movements, accentuating her graceful form before cascading to the floor. Jacob, she said, using his given name, thank you for joining me. And please, when we are alone, it is simply Asara. She gestured towards the table, where an array of dishes, some recognizably Earth cuisine, others, clearly Saruan, awaited them. A bottle of the iridescent blue star wine he had observed in her office sat chilling beside 2 glasses. As they dined, Asara posed incisive questions about his background, his education, and his prior professional engagements. Jacob responded truthfully, albeit cautiously omitting any reference to his current collaborative project with Leanna. You know, she remarked, refilling his glass with star wine, your resume did not mention your expertise in neurobiology or exoskeleton design. Jacob nearly choked on his beverage. It was not relevant to the position, was it? Her violet eyes held his, unblinking. A domestic assistant for a child with extensive nerve damage. I did not wish to give the impression that I was seeking to conduct experimental procedures, he admitted. Most individuals are apprehensive of researchers whose funding has been curtailed. Asara nodded slowly. And yet, you and Leanna have been spending an unusual amount of time in your quarters recently, ostensibly working on her science project, I believe. Jacob placed his glass down, his heart pounding. Asara, I am not displeased, Jacob, she interrupted, her voice softening. I am curious. Leanna appears more joyful than I have observed her in years, more hopeful. Whatever you are doing, it is having a beneficial impact. Relief washed over him, swiftly followed by a pang of guilt. I should have been more transparent with you. Indeed, you should have. She rose from her chair and moved to stand by the windows once more. Saruans hold honesty in high regard, above most other virtues, but we also value tangible results. Jacob joined her at the window, close enough to discern the subtle, intoxicating fragrance that seemed uniquely hers, a scent akin to vanilla and starlight, if starlight possessed an aroma. I have been developing a modified neural interface, he confessed. The existing models treat Saruan physiology as if it were human, with minor adjustments. but your neural pathways are fundamentally distinct. They are more luminous, responsive to emotional states as well as electrical impulses. Asara turned to face him, surprise evident in her expression. You determined this independently. With Liana's assistance, he acknowledged. She is brilliant, you know. I am aware. A faint smile curved her lips. She takes after her father in that regard. And her mother, Jacob added boldly, their eyes locking, the space between them seeming to crackle with an unspoken energy. Jacob became acutely conscious of their proximity, the way the light played across her cerulean skin, the gentle rise and fall of her chest with each breath. Humans are remarkable beings, Asara murmured. So resolute, so passionate. Kalen, my husband, used to say that what humans may lack in lifespan, they compensate for with the intensity of their purpose. Is that intended as a compliment or a criticism? Jacob inquired, his voice low. An observation? Her gaze momentarily lowered to his lips, then returned to his eyes. Seruans live nearly twice as long as humans. We tend to deliberate our actions, while humans proceed with haste. He smiled faintly. Sometimes haste yields distinct advantages. Her hand rose to rest lightly against his chest, where she must have felt his rapid heartbeat. Your emotional responses are so immediate, so genuine. It is fascinating. Jacob covered her hand with his own. Asara, I must confess, you have been perusing my journals. She finished, her expression inscrutable. He froze. How did you... Liana is many things, but subtlety is not among her virtues. A hint of amusement tinged her voice. I have been aware for several weeks that she has been borrowing them. Mortification washed over Jacob. I only read one entry. I should not have. No, you should not have, she agreed. But I find I am not as displeased as I ought to be. Her fingers curled slightly against his chest. What were your impressions of what you read? The star wine had loosened his inhibitions just enough to allow for complete honesty. I believed I was not alone in experiencing emotions that were perhaps inappropriate. The space between them vanished as Asara leaned forward, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that began tentatively, but quickly deepened. Jacob's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as the warmth of her body permeated his. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Asara's skin seemed to glow from within, luminescent patterns tracing beneath the surface. A Seruan response to intense emotion, he realized. I have desired to do that since your second week here, she admitted, her voice husky. Why did you not? He inquired, tracing the glowing patterns on her arm with gentle fingers. Because I am your employer. Because of Liana. Because I was uncertain if humans and Seruans... She trailed off. If we are compatible, Jacob finished, a smile playing at his lips. I believe we have just ascertained that. Asara's answering laugh was melodious. Perhaps we should conduct further research. For purely scientific purposes, of course. Of course, he agreed solemnly, though his eyes danced with amusement. Thorough investigation is indeed essential. As they moved towards the door together, Asara's hand firmly clasped in his, Jacob knew two things with absolute certainty. His clandestine project for Liana had just become considerably more complex. The bond forming between him and Asara was something that extended far beyond mere professional or even interspecies connections. It was a source of profound unease, yet simultaneously an intoxicating thrill. And for anything, he would not trade it. The morning after their shared meal, Jacob awoke with a rekindled sense of purpose. The recollection of Asara's kiss, the ethereal patterns that had pulsed across her cerulean skin in the throes of their shared passion, solidified his determination to finalize the exoskeletal suit. He aspired to gift her something that no amount of material wealth could procure. Hope. Their clandestine endeavor remained unmentioned. Instead, the preceding night had been dedicated to an intimate exploration of the striking physiological divergences between humans and Seruans. Jacob found himself smiling at the memory of Asara's surprise at human endurance and his own astonishment at her capacity to illuminate with pleasure at the slightest tender contact. Seruans typically approach relationships with deliberate pacing, she had murmured against his throat as they lay intertwined. We deliberate, we contemplate, we observe. "And how does the human method strike you now?" he had inquired, his fingers gently tracing the luminous markings on her arm. Her laughter was a low, resonant sound. "I believe there's merit in swift action now." As Jacob applied the final touches to the exoskeletal device in his private chambers, a fleeting sense of remorse pricked him for concealing it. However, Liana had been resolute. "Mother has exhausted all options," she had insisted. "She cannot withstand further disappointment. We must confirm its efficacy before presenting it." The portal slid open, and Liana's mobility unit whirred as she entered, her countenance radiating anticipation. "Is it complete? Mother will be occupied at the Interstellar Commerce Exposition for the entire day. This presents the ideal opportunity for its trial." Jacob inclined his head, holding aloft the elegantly designed apparatus. He had entirely reimagined it from conventional designs, integrating elements conducive to Saroan neural pathways rather than antagonistic. The user interface now synchronized with the same bioluminescent signals that caused Asara's skin to shimmer with emotion. "It is prepared," he affirmed. "However, Liana, it is imperative you recognize this is still in its nascent stages. It might not perform flawlessly upon its initial activation." "I understand," she responded with somber gravity, "but we must endeavor." They proceeded to the estate's medical facility, which Jacob had secretly prepared that very morning. Lena transitioned from her wheelchair to the examination platform with practiced grace, her gaze fixed upon the exoskeletal suit. "It's considerably more compact than the preceding models," she remarked as Jacob began affixing the components to her lower extremities and lumbar region. "The previous iterations attempted to overwhelm your neural system," he elaborated. "This one works in concert with it. The neural interface is meticulously calibrated for Saroan physiology." As he worked, Jacob meticulously detailed each component. The young woman listened with rapt attention, posing remarkably insightful inquiries regarding the technology. Her intellect strongly evoked Asara, causing a pang of affection to resonate within his chest for both of them. "All right," he declared, finally stepping back. "The system is operational. Do you perceive any sensation?" Liana's brow furrowed in concentration. "It feels warm, and there's a mild prickling sensation where the nodes interface with my spine." "Excellent. This indicates the interface is establishing a connection with your neural pathways." Jacob consulted the diagnostics on his tablet. "Now, I want you to visualize initiating movement in your right foot. Do not attempt to physically move it yet. Merely focus on the intention of movement." Liana nodded, her expression a mask of intense concentration. On the tablet, Jacob observed as neural impulses began to course through the interface. The exoskeleton's indicator lights shifted from crimson to amber. "It's functioning," he breathed. "The signals are successfully transmitting." "I can feel it," Liana whispered, her voice imbued with a tremor of emotion. "It's as if my limbs are awakening after a prolonged slumber. Let us attempt a simple action. Visualize contracting your toes." To their shared astonishment, Liana's toes twitched minutely. The young woman gasped, tears welling in her eyes. "I did it, Jacob. I accomplished it." Buoyed by this success, they dedicated the subsequent hour to practicing fundamental movements: ankle rotations, knee flexion, minor lifts. Each achievement amplified their confidence, drawing forth further tears of joy from Liana. It was further validation of Jacob's hypothesis. "I believe we are prepared to attempt standing," he stated at last. "However, I will provide complete support throughout the process." He assisted Liana to the edge of the table, positioning himself before her with his hands poised to provide aid should it be necessary. "Remember, the exoskeleton will assist, but you must direct it with your thoughts. Imagine standing upright, precisely as we practiced." Liana closed her eyes, her visage serene with profound concentration. Gradually, the exoskeleton emitted a low hum, and her legs straightened. Jacob kept his hands hovering near her limbs but refrained from touching her as she slowly ascended to a standing posture. "Open your eyes," he said softly. Liana's eyelids fluttered open, and she gazed downward in sheer wonder at her own feet bearing her weight. "I am standing," she whispered. Then with more conviction, "I am standing." "You are achieving this entirely on your own," Jacob assured her, his own eyes misting. "The exoskeleton merely facilitates the translation of your intentions into motion. May I attempt to walk? Small steps, he cautioned. I will remain close by. With meticulous care, Liana lifted her right foot and moved it forward. Then the left, followed by the right once more, then the left. Each stride gained a degree of confidence over the last, until she was ambulating slowly through the medical suite, with Jacob maintaining a close proximity without physical contact. It functions, she repeatedly affirmed, tears streaming down her face. It truly functions. They continued their practice for another hour, by which point Liana was moving with a relative degree of fluidity, albeit still somewhat mechanically. By the conclusion of their session, she was capable of traversing the length of the room and returning with minimal reliance on support. Mother is scheduled to return at 7 o'clock, Liana stated as Jacob assisted her back into her mobility unit. They had decided she would utilize it until the grand unveiling to conserve her energy. I wish to surprise her in the main corridor. I desire to walk to her, Jacob. Are you certain? We could practice further beforehand. I am certain, she interjected, her eyes alight with unwavering resolve. I have awaited 3 years to walk to my mother. I will not delay another day. Jacob found himself unable to contest her determination. They spent the remainder of the afternoon refining her movements and strategizing the surprise. As 7 o'clock neared, Jacob assisted Liana into the exoskeleton one final time, concealing it beneath a flowing, floor-length gown. Pax indicates she has just arrived at the driveway, he informed her, checking his tablet. Are you prepared? Liana nodded, her expression a complex interplay of apprehension and eager anticipation. I have been prepared for 3 years. They positioned themselves in the primary hallway, just beyond the entrance's line of sight. Jacob stood adjacent to Liana, ready to offer stability if required, yet resolved to allow her to achieve this moment independently. The main portal swung open. They discerned Sarah's voice expressing gratitude to the driver, the distinct sound of her footwear upon the marble floor, and the rustle of her attire as she divested herself of her outer garment. Liana, Jacob, she called out, I've procured sustenance from that terrestrial establishment you both favor. Lena squeezed Jacob's hand, then stepped forward into the hallway, assuming an upright stance. As Asara rounded the corner, laden with a substantial platter of food and preoccupied with maintaining the equilibrium of the various containers, she looked up, and the world appeared to halt. Her daughter, her once paralyzed daughter, was standing. Not merely standing, but taking a step forward, then another. Mother, Liana articulated, her voice thick with profound emotion. Observe me. I am capable of locomotion. The platter slipped from Asara's grasp, descending to the floor with a shattering impact. Her amethyst eyes widened in disbelief, her mouth agape in astonishment. Lena, she breathed. How? Jacob advanced, his heart pounding as he bore witness to the unfolding scene, the pivotal moment that would irrevocably alter their reality. How? Issa reiterated, stepping over the fractured debris, her gaze never deviating from her daughter. How is this conceivable? Liana advanced another tentative step, her countenance radiating pure joy. Jacob engineered it for me. He comprehended what all those esteemed medical professionals could not. As Sarah's attention shifted towards Jacob, her expression a tapestry woven with wonder, profound gratitude, and a thread of something darker. Hurt, perhaps, or a sense of betrayal. You orchestrated this in my absence. Her voice was carefully modulated, yet Jacob could perceive the luminescent patterns beneath her dermis pulsing with conflicting sentiments. Mother, Liana protested. He accomplished what no one else could. I can walk. I perceive that, Sarah stated softly, kneeling to embrace her daughter. Tears streamed down her azure cheeks as she held Liana close. It is a marvel. She glanced up at Jacob over Liana's shoulder. I require an elucidation regarding the clandestine nature of this endeavor. The subsequent period of elation was muted. Pax arranged for replacement provisions while Jacob elucidated the exoskeleton's functionality to Asara, who listened with rigorous scientific precision, posing detailed inquiries regarding the neural interface. Her technical acumen proved surprisingly profound. She grasped concepts that had occupied him for years to master. Following Liana's reluctant retirement to her chambers, still attired in the exoskeleton beneath her sleepwear. Merely for this evening, Mother, I implore you. Izera escorted Jacob to her private study. You withheld information from me, she declared without preamble, pouring herself a chalice of celestial wine, yet neglecting to offer him any. I did not intentionally mislead, Jacob countered. I simply omitted certain details. Within Saroan societal norms, that distinction is rendered inconsequential. Her violet eyes held a cool reserve. You shared my personal space while harboring secrets that profoundly impacted my daughter's welfare. Jacob winced. I harbored apprehension regarding the potential for fostering false hope. Leanna had recounted the myriad of unsuccessful treatments, the numerous specialists who had pledged positive outcomes, only to deliver nothing. Consequently, you assumed the prerogative of determining my access to information? Regarding my own progeny? The luminescent patterns beneath her epidermis flared with escalating ire. I erred, Jacob conceded. However, my intentions were honorable. I sought absolute certainty prior to disclosure. As Sarah exhaled, her animosity visibly subsiding. Your intentions? Indeed. Humanity places considerable emphasis on intent. She took a sip of her wine. Saroans evaluate actions, not motivations. The ultimate result carries greater weight than the underlying impetus. And the outcome, Jacob stated gently, is that Leanna can walk. Indeed. A subtle smile finally graced her lips. She can ambulate. You have restored to her something I believed was irretrievably lost. She placed her glass down and moved nearer to him. For that, my gratitude is immeasurable. However, you remain displeased. I am recalibrating my perception of your character. She extended a hand, her cool digits tracing the line of his jaw. Humans are considerably more intricate than my initial assessment suggested. Their discourse was interrupted by Pax's appearance at the doorway. Lady Asara, there is an urgent communique from Director Valon of the Cerulean Trade Commission. Asa's brow furrowed. At this late hour? Route it to my office terminal. Jacob remained in attendance while she engaged in the private conversation, utilizing the interim to examine the various artifacts adorning her study, predominantly sourced from Earth. He observed her collection of human art and literature, suggesting a pre-existing fascination with his species long before his arrival. Upon her return, her countenance bore a troubled expression. That was unanticipated. It appears news of Leanna's recuperation has already disseminated. How is that conceivable? It transpired only recently. The domestic staff, she explained, while devoted, cannot suppress the dissemination of information concerning developments of such magnitude. She shook her head. Saruans highly value the exchange of information. The sharing of significant advancements is considered a social benefit, and Leanna's ability to walk is undeniably a significant advancement. Jacob acknowledged, more significant than you might imagine. Asara commenced pacing. The neural interface you have devised could provide assistance to countless Saruans with analogous impairments. Our physiological makeup renders conventional therapeutic interventions ineffective, as you discovered. That is remarkable, Jacob stated, perplexed by her apprehension. Is it not? It would be, were it not for Norin Kallax. Her voice hardened upon uttering the name. He is a business adversary who has relentlessly sought to acquire my enterprise for years. He specializes in medical technology and has invested substantial capital in unsuccessful treatments mirroring your innovations. Should he ascertain the particulars of your design, he will undoubtedly attempt to pilfer it. Jacob's comprehension dawned. Precisely. And Violen has just apprised me that Cax has requested a meeting with me tomorrow, ostensibly concerning trade regulations, but the timing is decidedly suspicious. Jacob's protective instincts surged. We must secure the design. Document every facet. Asara nodded, yet her focus seemed elsewhere. She moved to the window, her gaze fixed upon the celestial expanse. There is an additional matter. Something I have never divulged to anyone, not even Leanna. Jacob joined her at the window, maintaining a respectful distance given her earlier display of displeasure. What is it? The orbital shuttle mishap that claimed Kalen's life and inflicted paralysis upon Leanna? Her voice faltered. I have never been convinced it was a mere accident. The inquiry uncovered evidence of tampering, but not sufficient to warrant prosecution. You suspect Kallax bears responsibility? Jacob inquired, aghast. I could never substantiate it, but the circumstances were indeed peculiar. Kalen had recently perfected a groundbreaking propulsion system that would have positioned my company as the preeminent entity in interstellar transit. Following his demise, the prototype vanished under mysterious circumstances from our research facility. Jacob felt a chilling wave of fury surge within him. And now that Liana has regained her mobility, and you possess access to another revolutionary technology, Cax may perceive a repetition of history, she concluded. Except this time, the technology is quite literally traversing my residence, affixed to my daughter. The implications were starkly evident. Lena was not merely mobile again. She was potentially imperiled. Jacob closed the intervening distance, taking Asara's hands within his. I will not permit anything to befall either of you. She looked up at him, vulnerability momentarily supplanting her prior ire. You are but a single human contending against a Saruan possessing vast resources and an utter lack of ethical constraints. One human is often sufficient, he declared with quiet conviction. We possess a remarkable degree of tenacity. A reluctant smile touched her lips. Indeed, I have observed that particular trait. Her fingers tightened around his. Jacob, my displeasure regarding the concealment persists, yet I comprehend your rationale with greater clarity now. And I require your presence, not solely for the exoskeleton technology, but for the unfolding events. The admission evidently cost her considerable pride. Saruans, he was discovering, placed immense value on self-reliance, almost as much as forthrightness. I am not departing, he promised, drawing her closer. We will safeguard Liana together, and I shall never again keep anything from you. As she yielded against him, the luminescent patterns beneath her skin began to pulse in a rhythm he now readily recognized as burgeoning desire. Their lips met in a kiss that conveyed forgiveness, profound need, and a nascent sentiment deeper than either was yet prepared to articulate. Later, entwined within her bed, Izera traced patterns upon his chest with luminous digits. Humans are quite remarkable, she murmured. So adaptable, so ingenious. You approach challenges from a distinct perspective compared to us. Is that intended as a compliment? Jacob inquired, a smile playing on his lips as he recalled their similar exchange from prior nights. It is an observation, she responded, echoing her previous assertion, and perhaps a subtle warning to Calyx. He has no comprehension of the adversary he is confronting. Jacob drew her nearer, relishing the sensation of cool silk against his skin. Tomorrow promised trials, perhaps even dangers. But tonight, in this very moment, he possessed everything he had never consciously desired. A brilliant, captivating alien woman held within his embrace. A remarkable child whose existence he had helped to profoundly alter, and a purpose that surpassed his wildest imaginings. Humanity, with all its inherent imperfections and inherent strengths, had something significant to offer the cosmos. Jacob awoke before the first light of dawn, his mind already abuzz with intricate plans. Beside him, Asara slept peacefully, her cerulean skin emitting a gentle luminescence in the darkness. A characteristic he had learned indicated profound contentment. He carefully extricated himself from the bed, intent on not disturbing her slumber. Within his rudimentary laboratory, Jacob commenced work on two distinct iterations of the exoskeleton schematics. The first encapsulated the genuine breakthrough, his insight into how Saruan neural pathways utilized bioluminescent signals rather than purely electrical impulses. The second was a meticulously crafted deception, featuring a critical flaw within the interface designed to cause catastrophic system failure, if ever actualized. As he worked, Jacob detected an anomaly in the tablet's performance, subtle processing delays and intermittent screen flickering. Acting on a hunch, he initiated a security sweep utilizing a program he had developed years prior during his research tenure. The findings corroborated his suspicions. Someone had gained remote access to the device. They are already observing, he muttered, powering down the tablet and reverting to analog methodologies. Pen and paper, a modality few technologically advanced species still contemplate. By the time Asara joined him, impeccably attired for her appointment with Calyx, Jacob had meticulously swept the room and discovered 3 discrete surveillance devices. These were professionally installed, he informed her, displaying the minuscule listening apparatuses. Recently as well. They are still in pristine condition. Asara's expression darkened considerably. Kalax operates with alarming alacrity. Too swiftly for this to be merely a reaction to Liana walking, Jacob observed. He must have already been monitoring your household. Which implies he is aware of us, she stated, her fingers brushing his. Of everything. Jacob nodded grimly. I discovered bugs in my quarters, your study, and the main corridor. Likely more throughout the residence. What course of action do we adopt? We provide him with what he desires, Jacob replied, a smile that did not reach his eyes gracing his lips. Or rather, what he believes he desires. They dedicated the morning to meticulous preparation. Liana, utterly delighted to be integrated into what she termed their espionage operation, practiced walking with calculated imperfections, incorporating occasional stumbles and feigning discomfort during certain movements. Simultaneously, Jacob loudly expounded upon calibration challenges within earshot of the concealed devices. Remember, he instructed her, we want them to believe the design is not yet entirely perfected. So, they will abscond with the incorrect iteration, she responded, her eyes sparkling with comprehension. Humans are rather clandestine. Strategic, Jacob corrected with a wink, and Kalax has never previously contended with a human adversary. Concurrently, Jacob established contact with his former research associates on Earth, utilizing Pax's secure communication network, which operated independently of the estate's primary digital infrastructure. To his considerable surprise, his former team responded with immediate and palpable enthusiasm. Saruan neural interface technology? Are you serious? His former lab partner, Dr. Sophia Hoffman, practically vibrated with excitement. The potential applications extend far beyond the medical realm. This could revolutionize human-Saruan technological integration. By noon, when Kalax's shuttle descended upon the estate's private landing pad, Jacob had strategically disseminated the spurious schematics throughout his digital archives, while the genuine blueprints were securely transmitted to Earth, accompanied by a preliminary patent application listing both himself and Asara as co-inventors. Norin Kolax embodied precisely the archetypal villain Jacob had anticipated. Tall, even by cerulean standards, with skin the color of midnight, and eyes that assessed everything through a lens of pure financial gain. He was accompanied by 4 associates whom he introduced as regulatory specialists. Lady Asara, Kik enunciated smoothly, executing a bow with practiced elegance. I extend my gratitude for accommodating this unforeseen visit. News of your daughter's extraordinary recovery has reached the highest echelons of the Trade Commission. Has it? Issa retorted coolly. I was unaware that my daughter's medical condition was a matter of regulatory interest. Any breakthrough technology necessitates appropriate certification, Cox stated, his gaze drifting towards Jacob, particularly when developed by unofficial entities. Jacob stepped forward, extending his hand in the customary human gesture of greeting. Jacob Matthews, household assistant and, it appears, a medical innovator. Cax ostentatiously ignored the offered hand. Indeed. Quite remarkable for an individual possessing no formal cerulean medical training to achieve success where our most distinguished minds have faltered. An outsider's perspective is precisely what's required, Jacob offered with a friendly tone. Human inventiveness, you know. One of Call's technical experts, a rather anxious-looking cerulean individual equipped with sophisticated diagnostic tools, chimed in. For official validation, we will need to thoroughly inspect the apparatus and its connection to the child. Of course, Sarah responded, embodying complete compliance. Liana is quite eager to showcase her advancements. However, I must caution you. The system exhibits certain persistent irregularities. As they proceeded towards the infirmary where Liana awaited, Jacob observed Kalax's technical personnel dispersing, ostensibly to scrutinize various facets of the estate's infrastructure, but in reality, to strategically deploy additional monitoring devices. He met Sarah's gaze, and she gave a subtle nod. She had also observed this. The inspection was merely a thinly veiled operation to acquire intelligence. The specialist posed probing inquiries regarding the cerebral interface, the constituent materials, and the calibration procedures. Jacob provided truthful answers concerning all aspects, except for the crucial innovation, instead detailing conventional methodologies recognizable to any biomedical engineer. Liana played her role flawlessly, demonstrating her ambulation with deliberately staged stumbles. It remains challenging at times, she explained to a specialist who appeared empathetic. Jacob indicates the interface requires fine adjustments. Indeed, Jacob concurred, projecting the fabricated schematics onto his tablet. The link between the illuminated neural pathways and the kinetic response occasionally experiences a temporal lag. I am endeavoring to devise a resolution, though it is quite intricate. He watched Cox's eyes gleam at the mention of luminescent pathways, the pivotal insight that underpinned the system's functionality. The bait had been taken. Following 2 hours of examination, Cax declared himself satisfied. Quite remarkable, despite the evident imperfections, the Trade Commission will review our findings. In the interim, I would strongly advise against any public exhibitions until formal certification has been secured. Certainly, Sarah agreed with practiced ease. Liana's well-being is our utmost priority. As they escorted Kallax and his entourage back to their transport vessel, Jacob felt the businessman's chilling gaze appraising him one last time. Humans are a curious species, Cax commented. So inventive, despite your inherent constraints. We have a knack for surprising people, Jacob replied with a strained smile. That evening, after confirming that Kallax's team had left at least a dozen new surveillance instruments dispersed throughout the mansion, Jacob and Asera retreated to the estate's garden house, the sole structure they had verified as being free of clandestine listening devices. They will initiate their action tonight, Jacob predicted, pacing the confined space. The fictitious schematics incorporate a sufficient quantum of genuine information to appear credible, but the calibration of the neural interface is entirely inaccurate. Should they attempt to construct it, it will fail catastrophically. But they will not solely desire the schematics, Azera pointed out, her expression etched with concern. They will wish to study Liana to comprehend how the current interface interacts with her physiology. Jacob nodded somberly. That is precisely why I have prepared a distinctive welcome for our nocturnal guests. He withdrew a compact device from his pocket. Do you recall my assertion regarding human strategic capabilities? We are also quite adept at laying snares. Asaro's luminescent patterns pulsed with apprehension. Jacob, Kallax is formidable. If he ascertains that you have deceived him, he already believes he is deceiving us. Jacob interjected, grasping her hands. That is his vulnerability. He undervalues humans because we are younger, less technologically advanced. He fails to grasp that these limitations have fostered greater adaptability, increased creativity within us. Asera studied him, wonder supplanting worry in her violet eyes. You exhibit no fear. Oh, I am quite terrified, he admitted with a chuckle. However, humans possess a lengthy history of performing at their peak when confronted with apprehension. It is, in a manner of speaking, our characteristic trait. She moved closer, her cool fingers tracing the contour of his jaw. You are an astonishing, improbable man. When I engaged a domestic assistant, I never envisioned finding a human who would facilitate your daughter's walking, develop affection for you, and subsequently orchestrate a trap for your business adversary, Jacob concluded, drawing her against him. Love? She whispered, her pulse accelerating. Jacob recognized the implication of his utterance and smiled. Yes, love. Is that acceptable? Her response was a kiss that left no room for ambiguity regarding her sentiments, her body pressing against his with an intensity that momentarily eclipsed their perilous circumstances. Later, as they lay together on the garden house's modest sleeping surface, Izera traced patterns across his chest. What transpires tomorrow, after your stratagem is enacted? Then, Jacob stated, bestowing a kiss upon her forehead, we shall reveal to the cosmos the consequences of interfering with a human's family. Jacob did not have to wait long. Shortly after midnight, the security apparatus he had modified transmitted a silent alert to his wrist-worn device. 6 individuals had breached the mansion's perimeter, neutralizing what they believed to be the primary security grid. They have arrived, he whispered to Asera, who lay beside him in the garden house. She sat up instantly, her luminescent patterns flaring with concern. Liana is secure, Jacob assured her. Remember the established plan. Earlier that evening, they had relocated Liana to a protected chamber adjacent to Asara's office, outfitted with a one-way force field, standard technological provisions, and high-security Saruan accommodations. More critically, they had positioned a decoy in Liana's bed, an elaborate holographic projection designed to mislead the intruders long enough for Jacob's trap to be sprung. They observed on a secure tablet as Kallax's team, their movements indicative of professional infiltrators, navigated the mansion with practiced efficiency. Upon reaching Leanna's chamber, 2 members entered, while the remaining one maintained a vigilant watch. "Now," Jacob declared, activating the device in his hand. Throughout the mansion, concealed emitters dispersed a colorless, odorless compound, innocuous to humans, yet inducing temporary incapacitation in Cheruans. Jacob had synthesized it based on his research into their distinctive physiology. Within mere seconds, all 6 intruders became motionless, utterly unable to move, yet fully cognizant. "That is our signal," Jacob announced, rising and donning a protective mask intended to filter the compound. He handed another to Asara. "The effect is transient, lasting only 20 minutes. They proceeded with haste through the mansion towards Leanna's room, where they discovered 2 incapacitated Ceruans attempting to abduct what they perceived to be a sleeping child. The hologram continued to breathe peacefully, oblivious to the peril. "Facial recognition confirms they are Kallax Industry security personnel," Asara stated, consulting her device. "This constitutes all the necessary proof." Jacob nodded. "Almost. We still require the principal culprit." As if summoned, his tablet indicated the approach of another vehicle, a luxury shuttle descending onto the private landing pad. Precisely as anticipated, Cax is arriving to personally oversee the operation. "Are the authorities in position?" Asara inquired, her voice taut with anticipation. "The Earth Embassy security contingent is stationed along the western perimeter. Ceruan Trade Commission enforcers are situated on the eastern flank. They await my directive." They returned to the garden house, observing as Norin Cax himself entered the mansion, accompanied by 2 additional security operatives. The businessman's assured stride faltered upon discovering his elite team immobilized in various postures throughout the residence. What is the meaning of this? They heard him demand via the surveillance feed. "Report. Someone report." Jacob activated his communication device. Instantly, the mansion was illuminated as both human and Ceruan authorities converged upon the property. Jacob and Asara emerged from the garden house to find Cax and his remaining guards being subdued by Trade Commission enforcers. "This is an outrage," Cax vociferated. "I was extended an invitation for a follow-up inspection." At midnight, Jacob inquired pleasantly, approaching with Sarah at his side. "A team of kidnappers?" Director Valen of the Trade Commission stepped forward, his expression grave. "Norin Kallax, you are detained pending investigation into attempted abduction, corporate espionage," and he glanced at a data slate. "Possible complicity in the sabotage of Shuttle KT-479 3 years ago." Cax's midnight blue complexion paled. "That is preposterous. You possess no evidence." "Actually," an Earthwoman who stepped forward interrupted, "we have a considerable amount." Dr. Sophia Hoffman, Jacob's former research associate, presented a data crystal. "While your team was preoccupied with attempting to purloin Mr. Matthews' current work, we gained access to your company's secure archives under a warrant issued by both Earth and Ceruan authorities." "Impossible," Cax stammered. "Those files are encrypted beyond comprehension." "Human encryption specialists," Jacob elucidated with a shrug, "were particularly motivated when children are involved." As Klex was escorted away, still protesting, Lena emerged from the house, walking with newfound confidence in her exoskeleton. She ran to Jacob and Asara, embracing them both. "Did we prevail?" she inquired, her eyes shining with elation. "We did," Asara confirmed, holding her daughter close. "Thanks to Jacob." "Thanks to all of us," Jacob corrected, encircling his newly formed family. The aftermath unfolded over the subsequent weeks with remarkable swiftness. Evidence retrieved from Klex's archives definitively linked him to the shuttle sabotage that had claimed Kalen's life and rendered Leanna immobile. The businessman faced multiple life sentences on Ceruan Prime, his enterprise dismantled, and his assets frozen. Concurrently, Jacob's exoskeleton design, now duly patented under both his and Asara's names, became the bedrock for a pioneering joint venture between Earth and Cerulean medical institutions. The technology that had restored Leanna's mobility would soon benefit thousands of similarly afflicted Ceruleans throughout the galaxy. 1 month following Kallax's apprehension, Jacob stood on the mansion's terrace, observing Leanna practicing dance routines in the garden below. Her movements grew progressively more natural each day as the neural interface adapted to her unique patterns. "She wishes to perform at the Cerulean Spring Festival," Sarah remarked, joining him at the railing. A dance to commemorate her father's memory. She will be prepared, Jacob assured her, draping an arm around her waist. She is the most resolute individual I have ever encountered, aside from her mother. Ezra leaned into him, her skin warming against his. The Interspecies Medical Board sanctioned our proposal this morning. The Matthews-Thalia neural interface will commence clinical trials next month. Matthews-Thalia, Jacob repeated, savoring the sound of their names intertwined. I find that agreeable. I presumed you might. She turned to face him, her violet eyes serious. There is another matter we must discuss. Something significant concerning cerulean customs. Jacob raised an eyebrow. Additional cultural disparities I ought to be aware of. In a manner of speaking, her luminescent patterns formed intricate designs he had never before witnessed. Apprehension, perhaps? When a cerulean selects a lifelong companion from a different species, tradition mandates a formal bonding ceremony before the High Council. Jacob's heart skipped a beat. Are you proposing to me? Is that the human terminology? Then yes, I suppose that is what I am doing. A smile played on her lips. Unless you find the prospect of being permanently united with an alien magnate and her formerly immobile daughter too daunting. Jacob chuckled, drawing her close. Daunting is precisely what humans excel at. It is, in essence, our specialization. Their kiss was interrupted by Liana's voice from the garden. Finally, does this signify that Jacob is officially my father now? They parted with laughter, finding Liana standing below them, hands on her hips, looking thoroughly pleased with herself. If he wishes to be, Asera called back. Nothing would afford me greater pride, Jacob responded, his voice thick with emotion. Later that evening, with Asara slumbering beside him, Jacob reflected on the peculiar trajectory that had led him to this point. 6 months prior, he had been a researcher who had faltered, with diminishing prospects, accepting a position as a domestic assistant out of sheer desperation. Now, he was on the cusp of becoming an integral part of a cerulean family, the co-founder of a revolutionary medical technology enterprise, and, most importantly, a father to a remarkable young girl who had imparted as much knowledge to him as he had to her. He recalled that pivotal instant when Asara had dropped her plate in astonishment, witnessing her daughter walk for the first time in years. It had irrevocably altered everything, not merely for Liana, but for all of them. Jacob Matthews, an ordinary human, had accomplished what the most distinguished cerulean medical minds had been unable to achieve, not due to superior intellect or advancement, but because he approached challenges from a different angle. Because humans, despite their myriad limitations and imperfections, possessed an inventiveness forged over millennia of overcoming adversity. As he drifted towards slumber, Jacob smiled. At times, all the universe required was one determined human with the opportune concept at the opportune moment. Humanity's spirit endures.